Picture a city. Not a ruined city, not a burning city, a living city, walls still standing, cathedral still intact, houses still full of people, children still running in the streets, dogs still sleeping in doorways. Now picture that city slowly eating itself alive from the inside. Picture a place where the last cat disappeared 3 weeks ago, where leather belts are soaked in water and boiled because the boiling softens them just enough to chew, where men have started looking at the rats differently, not with disgust, with hunger, where a handful of dried beans is worth more than a silver ring, and a silver ring is worth absolutely nothing because silver doesn't keep you alive and beans do. That's Calais, northern France. The year is 1347. Outside the walls, an army sits, not attacking, not trying to breach the gates, just sitting. Camped in neat rows, cooking fires burning every night, supply ships arriving at the harbour they've built for themselves just out of arrow range. The English army's comfortable, fed, warm. They can wait forever. They have food. Inside the walls, 11,000 people are discovering exactly what forever feels like when you haven't eaten a full meal in 4 months. This is the Siege of Calais, and it is one of the ugliest, most protracted, most brutal slow deaths in medieval military history. No dramatic assault, no catapults smashing through the gates. Just hunger, just time. Just the slow arithmetic of starvation counting down 11,000 lives one by one. We're going back there tonight, not to watch from outside, not as historians measuring troop movements and tallying casualties. We're inside the walls, one person, one day. One of the worst days of the siege, when the food is almost gone, and the choices that are left aren't really choices at all. I make these history stories, and I'll be honest, I genuinely have no idea if anyone actually falls asleep to them, or if you're all just people who find medieval urban starvation relaxing for some reason. Both are valid. Honestly, whatever works. Get comfortable. We're about to be very, very hungry. Here we go. The bells don't wake you this morning. You stopped noticing the bells weeks ago. They ring less often now anyway. The bell ringers need to eat like everyone else, and the church has larger problems than keeping precise time when the city is dying. What wakes you is cold. Not the cold you'd feel if you'd left a window open in autumn back home in the village of Hames, 20 miles east of here. That was clean cold. River-fed cold. The kind that smells of frost and turned earth and makes you pull a blanket tighter and feel briefly cosy. This cold is different. This is the cold of a room where the fire went out 2 days ago because the wood is gone and the coal is gone, and the furniture that could be burned has already been burned. This is the cold that has settled permanently into the walls, into the stone floor, into the straw mattress beneath you. The straw itself is barely straw anymore. It's been slept on so many months that it's compressed to almost nothing, matted flat as a rug, damp at the edges from the condensation that gathers on the walls each night. You open your eyes. The ceiling is the same ceiling it has been for the last 2 years. Rough plaster, one crack running from the northeast corner toward the centre that you've watched lengthen since August. Dark wood beams running across it. A small dark stain near the window where the rain came in last spring, when everything was still normal and a leaking roof was the most significant problem you had. You lie still for a moment. This is habit now, not laziness. Moving too fast in the morning makes your head swim. The light-headedness that comes with not eating enough. It ambushes you when you stand up too quickly, turns the room grey at the edges, makes you grab for the wall. You've learned to ease into being upright, to give your body time to remember it's still alive. Beside you, Jacot is already awake. You can tell because he stopped making noise. When Jacot is asleep, he breathes loud and irregular. Little hitching catches in his throat. Now there's just silence, and you can feel the tense, deliberate stillness of a person who is lying in the dark thinking about something they don't want to think about. Rations today, Jacot says. Not a question. Rations today, you confirm. Neither of you moves for another minute. The ration distributions happen at the square near the eastern gate, twice a week. The constable's men hand out what they have. What they have grows smaller every time. Last Tuesday it was £1/4 pound of dried horse meat per person, stringy, dark, smelling of something you tried not to identify, and a cup of grain that was mostly chaff, and something you think might have been grounder corn husks mixed in to stretch it further. The week before that it had included a thumb-sized piece of hard cheese. You ate the cheese in 2 bites standing in the square before you even got back to the house. You told yourself you'd save half of it. You didn't. Nobody does. When you haven't been eating enough for 4 months, willpower stops being a real thing that exists. There is a smell in the room. Let me tell you about the smell because it's important, and because nobody ever talks about this part. The smell of a besieged city in winter is not the smell of a battlefield. It's not blood and smoke and the drama of war. It's much smaller and much worse than that. It's the smell of people who haven't washed properly in weeks, of bodies that are beginning to eat themselves, metabolizing muscle and fat in ways that produce a particular sweet-sour odor that clings to skin and hair. It's the smell of a city where the sewage management has degraded because the people who maintain the drainage ditches are too weak to do the work. Of middens that haven't been cleared because there are no carts to clear them and no healthy men to load the carts. Of rotting straw. Of mould on the wall above the window where the plaster has cracked. And underneath all of it, underneath everything, the smell of smoke. Not wood smoke, the good honest smell of cooking and warmth, but the particular acrid bite of things being burned that shouldn't be burned. Furniture, barrels, the doors of abandoned houses, a city consuming its own bones to stay warm. You smell like all of this. So does Jacot. So does everyone. You stopped noticing each other weeks ago. You get up. The floor is cold under your feet. Actually cold. The kind that makes your toes curl reflexively. Your shoes are near the door, but you don't reach for them yet. You stand for a moment, letting the dizziness pass. One hand on the wall, breathing through your nose. Better. Okay. Your clothes are on because you slept in your clothes. You've been sleeping in your clothes since October, when the nights got cold enough that undressing felt like an unnecessary risk. Your hose are stiff at the knees. Your shirt is the same shirt you've worn for 6 days straight, and it shows it. Your coat. Good heavy wool, the one your mother packed when you left for the city, the one she'd saved for, the one she told you to take care of because it has to last, has a new tear along the left forearm from last week when you caught it on the iron bracket by the physician's door. You haven't repaired it. You don't have thread. Your belt is new. That's a joke. It's not actually a belt. It's a piece of rope Jacot found in a courtyard, tying off a gate that no longer needed to be tied. He found it 2 weeks ago when his own belt, a nice leather one his father made, disappeared. Jacot's father was a baker. Was. You don't think about that. Maître Gilles is already up when you get downstairs. He's always already up. In 2 years of working for him, you have never once woken before him. You used to think it was virtue, work ethic, the mark of a serious man. Now you think he probably just doesn't sleep well. You see it in his face, the hollows under his eyes that were there before the siege and have only deepened. The way he sits sometimes in the evening with his hands on his knees, staring at nothing, and you know he's running through his patients in his head, the ones he can't save, the ones he's already lost. He's heating water over a brazier this morning. The brazier is small, iron with legs, sitting on the stone hearth, and it burns charcoal, or what's left of it. He portions it out carefully now. 3 small lumps for the morning, 2 for the evening. The sack in the corner by the door, which was full in September, is about the size of a loaf of bread. Boy, he says. He's been calling you boy since you started. You've given up expecting him to use your name. The dyer's wife on Rue Saint-Pierre. Fever. I need you to take her this. He hands you a small clay pot sealed with a piece of cloth tied at the neck. You know what's in it without being told. Willow bark tea, or what passes for it now. The willow bark ran out in November. He's been making do with other things since then. Dried sage, dried chamomile, some herbs you don't recognise and haven't asked about, because the important thing isn't what it is, but what it does. It doesn't do much. He knows this. He still makes it. Maître Gilles is a small man, dry and precise, with fingers that are never entirely clean because of his work and a voice that is never quite warm but is always direct. He was the best physician in Calais before the siege, which is not the same as saying he was excellent. Medicine in 1346 is not what you'd call a precise science. But he was careful, and he didn't make things worse when he could help it, which puts him ahead of most of his contemporaries. He has treated 17 starvation cases in the last 3 weeks. 2 of them recovered. Both were younger people, a boy of about 12, a woman in her 30s. Their bodies had reserves enough to hold on long enough. The other 15 died. He writes all of them in his ledger. Names, dates, symptoms, outcome. The ledger is almost full. He started a new one last month. It's filling faster. After the dyer's wife, he says, not looking up from the pot he's stirring, there's a man in the garrison, North Barracks. He's been there 3 days. Says it's his lungs. His lungs, in winter, in a cold barracks, with men who are underfed and weakened and sleeping 6 to a room without adequate heat. A man with lung problems in the garrison is probably a man with the beginnings of pneumonia, or something worse that you don't have a name for but that you've watched kill 3 people in the last month. Maître, you say, is there anything I should... Tell him to eat if he can, keep warm if he can, breathe slowly. A pause. Tell him I'll come tonight. You both know what that means. That visit tonight might be a last one. You've been on enough of those errands now to read the code. You take the pot. Outside is a different world from the room. Well, it's the same world. It just hits harder when you step into it. Rue de la Fontaine is narrow, barely wide enough for 2 people to pass if both turn sideways. The buildings press close on each side, their upper floors overhanging until they almost touch, turning the street below into something close to a tunnel. In summer this was useful, cool and shaded. In winter it means the sun never quite reaches the ground level and the street is permanently damp and cold. There are people out despite the hour, despite the cold. Not many, not like before. Before the siege, this street was busy from dawn to dusk. The fishmonger's cart making its morning rounds, the sound of a blacksmith 2 streets over, the smell of bread from Jacot's father's bakery at the end of the block. Now the street is quiet in a way that isn't peace. It's the quiet of exhaustion, of people conserving energy, of bodies that are deciding at some cellular level not to spend what little they have left on movement that isn't strictly necessary. An old woman is sitting outside her door on a stool despite the cold. She nods at you. You nod back. You don't know her name, and you've stopped being embarrassed about that because names require social effort, and social effort requires calories you don't have. You know her by the stool and the grey wool she always wears and the way she watches the street with eyes that don't miss anything. The street smells of rot. It smells of rot on every street in Calais now. Not the dramatic rot of bodies, though there is some of that further north near the garrison, near the poorer quarters, but the ambient rot of a city in slow decomposition. The organic material that normally gets cleared, the refuse, the animal waste, the kitchen scraps, none of it is being managed anymore. It's just there, in the corners, along the base of walls, freezing at night, thawing slightly during the day, slowly becoming part of the street itself. You walk quickly because warmth comes from moving. The city of Calais in December 1346 is smaller than you'd think, for a city of 11,000. The walls form a rough rectangle, maybe 3/4 of a mile on the long side, less than half a mile on the short. It's a port city built for trade, not for this. The harbour, what used to be the harbour, before the English built their own harbour just outside the walls, and cut off the sea lanes, is to the north. The walls are thick, stone-faced, maintained well by French royal money, because Calais was always important, always a gatehouse to the continent, always the place where the English wanted to be. Now the English are exactly here, just outside, about 300 yards from the nearest wall at closest point, far enough that a crossbow bolt barely reaches, close enough that you can see their fires at night. You pass a man sitting against a wall with his hood up and his knees pulled to his chest. He's not sleeping. His eyes are open. But he's not really doing anything either. Just sitting, watching the street, his body doing the minimum it needs to do to continue being a body. You've seen more of these lately. People conserving, waiting, not sure what they're waiting for, but waiting. You're 17 years old. You came to Calais 2 years ago from Hames, a village you still smell sometimes in your dreams. River water, turned earth, wood smoke from real wood, your mother's bread, which was not extraordinary bread by any measure, but was made from actual grain and was actually there. You came to the city for the physician's apprenticeship because your father knew someone who knew someone, and because in Hames there was no future and in Calais there was, at minimum, the possibility of one. You've been thinking about Hames a lot lately. The dyer's wife lives 3 streets away, across a small square that used to have a fountain. The fountain is broken now, or rather it works, but the pipe froze in November and cracked, and nobody has fixed it because nobody has the energy or the materials to fix it. The square still has 2 pigeons in it when you arrive. You watch them with an attention you're not proud of. The pigeons have learned to be fast. By now, all the birds in Calais have learned to be fast. The first months of the siege, the pigeons were caught and eaten. The ones that survived are the survivors, quick and skittish and gone before you've taken 2 steps toward them. You don't bother. Chasing a pigeon would burn more energy than you'd get from catching one. The dyer's house is identifiable by the permanent faint stain along the lower wall, blue-purple, bled out from years of waste from the vats inside. Normally the whole street smells of it. The mordants, the pigment baths, the acidic bite of the setting agents. Now the smell is just cold and wood rot and the city's general ambient misery. The vats are cold. There's been no dyeing since October. No customers, no materials, no fire to heat the baths. The dyer himself is, you don't know exactly. Gone south before the siege closed, maybe. Or dead. Or somewhere in the city. Unable to work. Unable to do anything. His wife Marguerite answers on the second knock. She's maybe 40. A short, broad woman who was probably strong and healthy looking 6 months ago. Now she has the look all the women have. All the people have. The tightness around the eyes, the slightly loose skin, the way the skull becomes more visible as the padding under it diminishes. Her hair is dull. Her hands, when she takes the clay pot from you, are cracked at the knuckles and around the nails, the kind of cracking that happens when you don't have proper food to maintain skin and there's no fat to rub into them. Maître Gilles sends this, you say. She looks at the pot. Her eyes do something complicated. Gratitude, yes, but also a kind of resignation. She knows what this is. She knows what it can do, which isn't much. How is he? She asks. Not Maître Gilles, her husband. Better than yesterday. He's not, but this is what you say. She nods. She knows. Tell him I'll come this afternoon. You tell her. You turn to go. Boy, she says, and her voice makes you stop even though it's not your name. There's a rumour about Philip. King Philip VI. The French king who was supposed to relieve this siege, who was supposed to come with his army and drive the English back and open the gates and make this stop. I've heard it, you say. Is it true? You don't know. You genuinely, truly don't know. The rumour is that Philip has turned back, that he rode north with his army in August after Calais, and then, for reasons that are debated in every house and tavern in this city, though with less vigour every week as the people doing the debating have less energy for it, turned around, retreated, left Calais to its own devices. The official position of the garrison is that the king is coming, still coming, that relief is on its way. Jean de Vienne, the constable, the military commander of the city, has said this, has said it so many times that the words have started to sound hollow, the way a bell sounds hollow when the clapper's gone. I don't know, you say, because it's the only honest answer. She looks at you. Her eyes are dry. Whatever tears she had available have been spent. Well, she says, and closes the door. The garrison is in the northern quarter, closest to the harbour gate. Walking there takes you past the main square, past the cathedral, past what used to be the market area. The market runs now on 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Fridays, and calling it a market is generous. It's more of a congregation of people who have things to trade with people who have other things. The goods have changed. In September, when the siege was 3 weeks old and people were just beginning to understand that this was going to last a while, you could still find cheese, preserved fish, wheels of hard-aged cheese, good wine, the bottoms of wine barrels being scraped out and resold. Now the market trades in things that wouldn't have been considered tradable 6 months ago. A man has 3 tallow candles. A woman wants dried rose hips. Whatever's left, whatever anyone has. Someone is trading a woolen blanket for a fixed quantity of grain. The blanket is clearly worth more than the grain, but the man selling the grain knows that the woman needs the grain more than the warmth, and she knows it too. And the negotiation isn't really a negotiation at all. It's a slow surrender to necessity. A child is watching from a doorway across the square, maybe 8 years old. The dullness in her eyes is the worst thing. Children that age should be unable to sit still, should be fidgeting and observant and making noise. This one just watches, still as a painting, her arms wrapped around herself, not for warmth, but because that's what your body does when it's conserving everything. You look away because you have to. The cathedral is still standing, obviously. Its stone is cold and grey in the winter light, and the doors are open, as they always are. People come and go. Not for services. There haven't been regular services in weeks, the priests running out of words and energy at about the same pace. But for the warmth of other people's bodies, and because it's a large stone building that keeps the wind out, and because sometimes being in a big space helps when everything feels like it's closing in. You don't go in. You keep moving. The garrison barracks are a long stone building built against the inner face of the north wall. There's a smell outside it. Unwashed men. And something underneath that, something medical and bad. You've been smelling it for months. It's the smell of a fighting force that is no longer really fighting, that is sitting in barracks burning through its reserves, maintaining the minimum for the same reason the city is maintaining the minimum, because to stop entirely is to die, and they're not ready to die yet. The guards on the barracks door used to stand straight. They used to challenge people approaching. Now they stand, but the straightness is gone out of them, the shoulders curving inward. One of them recognizes you from previous visits and waves you through without speaking. The interior of the barracks is dim and smells worse than the outside. Rows of wooden beds, most of them occupied or semi-occupied, men sitting on them, lying on them, wrapped in whatever they could find. There's a sound that gets into you and stays, the sound of men coughing, a wet, productive cough that says, without any need for medical training, that this is not just the cold. This is something settling in the chest, something that finds weak bodies hospitable. The man Maitre Gilles sent you to is in the third row, near a shuttered window. He's called Pierre something. You never got the last name. And he's maybe 30, though he looks 50 in this light. He was a man-at-arms, which means before the siege he wore armour and trained and carried the weight of it without trouble. The armour is still here, stacked neatly in the corner of his sleeping space because a soldier doesn't abandon his armour. But Pierre hasn't worn it in 3 weeks. The effort of putting it on, the weight of it. He told you last visit that he tried to lift the chest, peace, and had to sit down afterward. He's awake when you arrive, his eyes track to you. The physician sent you, he says. His voice is thick. He'll come tonight, you say. He asks how your breathing is. Like swallowing cloth. He pauses for a long rattling breath that proves his point. Better than yesterday, I think. Hard to tell. You crouch down to be at his level. The clay pot from Maitre Gilles is for the dyer's wife. You already delivered it. For Pierre, you have what you have in your coat pocket, a small folded packet of dried thyme, which does essentially nothing for pneumonia but does make the air smell marginally better. And marginally better matters when you're sick and the air is terrible. You unfold it and set it near him. Burn this a bit if you can. Not much, just a little. He looks at the thyme. Do I eat it? No. Smell it. He almost smiles. The almost smile breaks your heart a little. How are things out there, he asks. You know what he's asking, not about the street, not about the market, about the walls, about the English, about what's coming. The same, you say. It's the honest answer. The English army hasn't moved in weeks. Why would they? They don't need to. Every day they sit still and cook their meals. Every day the city weakens itself a little more. They are winning without lifting a sword. This is what sieges are. You understand this now in a way that is physical and total. The way you understand cold or thirst. A siege is not a battle. A siege is one side refusing to fight and the other side slowly realizing that not fighting is its own kind of devastation. My family, Pierre says. They're in Saint-Omer if I don't. He stops. The cough takes him for a long moment, rattling and wet and ugly. When it's done, he's grey around the mouth. If I don't make it, is there a way to get a letter out? There isn't. There hasn't been a way to get a letter out since September, when the English completed their encirclement and the last messenger bird was used. You know this. He probably knows this too. I'll ask Maître Gilles, you say. It's not a lie exactly. You will ask. The answer will be no. But the asking gives him something to wait for, and something to wait for is more valuable right now than honesty. He nods, and his eyes close, and you watch his chest rise and fall with effort, and you think, he might not make it to tonight. You stand. Your knees ache when you stand, not badly but persistently, a deep ache in the joints that you've started waking up with. You're 17. You shouldn't have aching knees. It's what not eating enough does to a body that's still growing. Maître Gilles told you this in his matter-of-fact way. The body needs minerals to maintain the joints. Without adequate food, it borrows from itself, literally dismantles its own structure to keep the critical systems running. Your body is eating your cartilage to keep your brain and heart going. You're 17 years old, and your knees sound like a door on a rusty hinge when you go upstairs now. That seems worth mentioning. There's a wall. Obviously there are walls. This is a walled city. That's the point. That's both the protection and the prison. But there is one particular section of the eastern wall, maybe 30 feet of stone parapet walkway above the east gate, where you go when you have a few minutes that aren't strictly accounted for, and you need to remember that the world outside still exists. You shouldn't go there today. You have 3 more errands for Maître Gilles, a woman on Rue des Tisserands with a wound that isn't healing properly, an old man on the southern side who needs his dressings changed, and you need to get back in time to help with the afternoon preparations for rations tomorrow. But you go anyway. The climb is 12 steps. 12 rough stone steps, uneven, worn smooth in the centre from decades of feet going up and down. The wall walk is maybe 4 feet wide, protected on the outer side by a low parapet wall that comes to about your chest. The stone is cold under your hands when you grip the top of it. Really cold this morning, the kind that burns slightly through the skin. And there it is, the English camp. You've been looking at it since September. You've gotten used to it in the way you get used to a scar. It's there, it's permanent, it's part of the landscape now. But every time you come up here, there's still a moment of impact, of wrongness, of the incomprehensibility of it. The camp is enormous. That's the thing nobody quite prepares you for. You knew an army was coming. You knew the English had won at Crécy. You knew in an abstract intellectual way that Edward III would besiege the city. But knowing that and seeing it are different things. The camp stretches in a rough arc around the landward side of the city, from the dunes near the sea on the north to the marshes on the south. It's not tents exactly, or rather, it started as tents in August, but by now they've built something more permanent. Wooden huts, small buildings, streets of a sort laid out in rough grids between the structures. From up here it looks like a city growing around the city, an inverse city, well supplied and expanding, surrounding a starving city that is contracting. They have fires. You can see them from here. Small bright points in the grey morning, smoke rising. They're burning actual wood from actual trees they've cut from the surrounding countryside. The smell of it. Real wood smoke, the smell of sufficient fuel, the smell of warmth, reaches you on the right wind and does something unpleasant to your chest. Not grief, exactly. Something more animal and immediate than grief. They have food, stores of it, you know. Ships have been coming into their little harbour, visible from the north wall on clear days. Supply ships, heavy in the water with grain and salted meat and whatever an army needs to maintain itself through a winter siege. Edward III is organised, methodical, and very rich, and he has planned this down to the barrel of salt pork. He's 300 yards away. You could throw a stone and not quite reach him. You watch the camp for a while. There's movement out there, figures moving between structures, horses being led, the normal mundane activity of a military settlement doing its morning business. From this distance they're just shapes, generic, undifferentiated. They could be anyone. They could be from your own village. Some of them probably are, in the inverted sense, English versions of you, boys from English Hames equivalents sent off with their father's blessing and their mother's worry to stand outside a French city in the cold and wait. You wonder if they're warm. You stop wondering because it doesn't help. There is a bird sitting on the parapet wall 15 feet away from you. A crow, black with that particular crow quality of looking interested and contemptuous at the same time. It's watching you with one eye, head tilted. You watch it back. It's a big crow, fat-looking, well-fed. Crows in a siege zone are never poorly nourished. There's always something. You know this in a clinical way now. You've seen it. Crows are the clean-up crew of any disaster. They're doing very well for themselves this winter. The crow doesn't move, neither do you. For maybe 20 seconds you hold this stalemate. Two creatures of roughly equal size contemplating each other in the cold morning air on top of a wall in the most miserable city in France. Then someone shouts far below, and the crow snaps its wings and is gone in 2 strokes, already distant before you've turned to look at what the shout was about. It was nothing. Just a man arguing with another man over the position of a cart. Normal morning business. Anger being generated by stress and hunger and the claustrophobia of too many people in a shrinking space. You watch the argument resolve itself, the cart moving 3 feet to the left, and then you turn back to look at the English camp one more time. 300 yards. The length of the longest shot a good crossbowman can make. Somewhere out there, Edward III is eating breakfast. Probably something with meat in it. Probably something hot. You're so tired of being hungry. There's something you should understand about hunger. Real hunger. Not, I missed lunch, hunger. Not, dinner was late hunger. Not even, I'm really hungry. I've been eating less today hunger. Real hunger. The kind that has been going on for weeks, that has gone from urgent to painful to a kind of background hum that's always there, to something specific to the mind that you don't expect. It makes you very, very patient. Not the energetic impatience of someone who wants to eat but can't quite yet. The deep stillness of a body that has learned it cannot afford to waste energy on urgency. A kind of flattening out. The world gets smaller and simpler. What matters narrows to when is the next ration, whether it will be enough to keep functioning, how many steps it takes to walk from here to there, and whether the calories burned are worth the calories that might be gained. You become very good at math of a specific kind. Not the merchant's math that you might have learned in a normal apprenticeship. Not profit margins and interest rates and currency conversions. The math of bodies. The math of minimum maintenance. How little can I do and still accomplish what I need to accomplish? How much does walking to the garrison cost me versus the alternative? This math, by the way, is the same math being run by 11,000 other people in this city simultaneously. It's the sound of the siege if you could hear it, not drums and weapons clashing. The collective, constant, quiet calculation of 11,000 humans working out how to stay alive for one more day. The woman on Rue de Tisserand is a weaver, was a weaver. The loom is still there in the main room of her house, taking up half the space, its wood worn smooth and dark with years of use. She hasn't woven anything since the siege began. No thread, or not enough to matter. No market, no point. Her name is Isabeau, and she has a wound on her right forearm that she got in October when she was helping to clear timber. The city organised groups to dismantle certain structures to get fuel, supervised timber clearing from the outer ring of buildings near the walls, and she'd cut herself on a nail. It's a small wound. In good times it would have healed in a week without incident. In these times, without proper food supporting the body's repair systems, without clean dressings changed often enough, it has become something slow and stubborn and worrying. Maître Gilles looks at it twice a week. He cleans it with wine. Real wine. Not drinking wine, which has been gone for months, but a jug of wine vinegar he's been hoarding for exactly this purpose. He changes the linen dressing. He tells Isabeau to keep it elevated when possible, and to come to him immediately if the redness spreads past the edges he's marked with a light chalk line on her skin. Today the redness has not spread. This is good news. You clean the wound. She doesn't flinch. She's past flinching. Put on the new dressing, which is old linen torn into strips, clean but not new, the same linen that has been cleaned and reused 6 times already. The linen is beginning to thin at the edges. There are only a few yards of it left in Maître Gilles' supply chest. How does it feel, you ask? It aches, she says. Less than last week, I think. That's good. You believe it might actually be good. You're not sure. You have 2 years of watching Maître Gilles work and remembering what he does and why, but you are not him, and wounds in starving bodies are unpredictable. My daughter's in Boulogne, Isabeau says, not quite looking at you. When this is over, I want to get to Boulogne. When this is over, you agree. The automatic phrase, the conditional future that everyone speaks in now. When this is over, when the relief comes, when Philip sends his army, when the English give up. When? You tie off the dressing and leave her to it. Rations are tomorrow. This is the fact that organises today, not what work needs to be done, not what patients need visiting, not what the constable's latest announcement said, or what the rumours are saying about Philip, or what the English did or didn't do in the night. Rations are tomorrow, which means today is the last day before the next small measure of survival, and that fact sits in your chest like a stone. Your last meal was last night. Broth. Mostly water with a few scraps of something in it that might have been turnip, might have been something else, you didn't ask, and half a piece of hard bread that you soaked in the broth, to soften it enough to chew without using energy you didn't have. You ate it sitting at the table in the physician's kitchen, Jacot across from you doing the same, both of you not talking because talking costs something. The broth was warm. That was its best quality. This morning you had nothing. The charcoal is too precious to heat water for something that won't add calories. You know this. You don't argue with it. You are hungry in a way that is now just a fact about you, like being 17, like having brown hair. It's ambient. It's context. It's the background against which every other thing you do today happens. By midday, guessed midday, the sun somewhere behind the clouds at what feels like its highest point, which isn't very high in December, you finished the visits and made it back to Maître Gilles's house on Rue de la Fontaine. Jacot is there. He's been helping with the firewood situation, which means he's been doing what everyone does about firewood now, which is finding things to burn and making decisions about what those things were worth. Today it looks like he's disassembled a small table that was sitting in the back room, unused, and arranged the pieces near the brazier. Not enough to last the week, enough for tonight. He looks up when you come in. His face does the specific thing it does, a quick assessment, checking whether you've brought any food. You haven't. He knew you wouldn't. His face does the other thing, neutral acceptance. Garrison's talking, he says. About what? De Vienne. Jean de Vienne, the constable, the military commander of this city, the man who's been holding this together, holding them all in, holding them all together, refusing to negotiate since August. He's going to send people out. You stop in the doorway. Out where? Out through the gates. Jacot pulls apart one of the chair legs with his hands, gives it a small crack to test the wood. Good dry wood. He's sending out the bouches inutiles, the useless mouths. You know this term. It's been circulating for weeks in the way that terrible ideas circulate slowly, through whisper and rumour, until one day they become real. Bouches inutiles, useless mouths. The people in a siege who consume food but don't contribute to the defence. The old, the sick, the very young, the women without skills the garrison needed. The logic is brutal and mathematical. If the food is running out, you extend the survival of the garrison, the fighting men, the ones who matter militarily, by reducing the number of mouths being fed. You open the gates, push the people out, and let the English decide what to do with them. The English have a choice when this happens. They can let the refugees through, or they can push them back. Edward III pushed them back last time. In November, when de Vienne had sent out the first group of people, mostly the very old, mostly the destitute, Edward had refused to let them through the English lines, sent them back to the gates, which were then closed because there was nothing left to feed them. Those people spent 3 days in the freezing mud between the city walls and the English lines. You knew 2 of them. One survived. The other was an old man who should never have been put out there in the first place. How many, you ask? 500, someone said. Maybe more. 500 people pushed out of their own city because the city can no longer afford to feed them. You sit down. You put your hands on the table. The table is cold under your palms, and the cold is real and specific and grounding. When? Tomorrow, after the rations. So they get the ration first. A pause. De Vienne is not a monster. He's just doing what has to be done, you say, and the bitterness in your own voice surprises you slightly. Yes, Jacot says, and his voice is not bitter. It's flat. This is what flat sounds like after 4 months of siege, when you've used up all your anger on October and November, and now there's just December, just this, just the next hour and the hour after that. You look at your hands on the table. Is my name on the list, you ask? No. You're the physician's apprentice. You're useful. A pause. Mine isn't either. I help with the garrison food preparation. You nod. You are useful. You're not a bouche inutile. This is good. This makes you alive. It also means that tomorrow you'll watch 500 people walk out of the gate and you'll be standing on the inside, and the gate will close behind them, and you'll go back to measuring out rations and changing dressings and counting pieces of charcoal. You sit with this for a while. Jacques cracks the chair leg across his knee, adding it to the stack. The sound is loud in the cold room, clean and final. That evening, Maître Gilles goes to the garrison. You know before he leaves that he won't be coming back with good news about Pierre. You can tell by the way he packs his bag, slowly, selecting things with the deliberateness of a man who knows he won't need most of them, the way you pack, for a journey you know will be short. He takes the last of the wine vinegar. He takes a small jar of rendered fat he's been saving. He takes the linen strips freshly washed that afternoon, hung near the brazier until they're dry and slightly warm. He takes them all, and he says nothing to you when he leaves, and the door closes quietly behind him. Jacques and you sit in the kitchen. The brazier is going. One of the chair legs has been added to the charcoal. The room is not warm, but it's less cold than outside, which is the best you can say for it. The light is tallow candles, 2 of them, both burning low, the tallow smelling slightly off. The way it does when the animal fat it came from wasn't in ideal condition when it was rendered. Not quite rancid. Close to it. Jacques is mending a tear in his coat with a needle, and what appears to be a strand of his own hair, which is creative and probably won't hold, but is better than nothing. You're doing nothing. Your hands are on the table. You're being hungry, which has stopped being an active experience and has become a passive one. You're not thinking about food. You are sitting in the space that thinking about food has hollowed out in you. Tell me something, Jacques says, not looking up from the hair thread needle. What? Something from before. Something good. This is a game you've developed. You both know the rules by now. Nothing too good. Nothing that makes you feel the absence too sharply. Something middle distance. Something enough. You think for a moment. There was a dog in Hames, you say. Old dog. Belonged to the miller. Big brown thing about this high. You indicate with your hand level with the tabletop, and the stupidest animal I have ever encountered in my life. Would chase its own tail for 10 minutes at a stretch, completely committed, every single time, as if it had never done it before. Jacques makes a sound that isn't quite a laugh, but is adjacent to one. Pointless, you continue, never caught it, never figured out that it couldn't catch it. Every morning, discovery, chase, defeat, brief confusion, and then just going to lie in the sun like nothing had happened. Where is this dog now? Dead, probably. Old dog when I left. Good death, Jacques says. Good death, you agree. There's a pause. Jacques' needle works through the wool. The candle makes a small sound as it settles in its holder. My mother used to make a soup, Jacques says, not looking up. From the bread that didn't sell, everything left at the end of the day that was too hard to sell, she'd put it in a big pot with whatever was around. End of vegetables, scraps of meat if there were any, sometimes just an onion and salt, and cook it down until everything's soft, and it would come out thick, like the bread had given up being bread and become something else, something better than it was. You say nothing. He doesn't need you to. She made it on Fridays, he says, when the week was almost over and everything needed using up. Pause. It tasted like the end of effort, like everything had been worth it. Silence. The fire settles. Outside, somewhere on a street away from you, a dog barks twice and then stops. The sound of footsteps, heavy boots, purposeful, more than one person. Garrison patrol. They patrol the inner streets at night, partly for security, partly because moving people are harder to victimise than stationary ones, and the city has developed its own kind of internal predation now. Not organised crime exactly, but the kind of opportunism that emerges when enough people are desperate enough. Things go missing, food especially. People who have found food try not to be seen having it. The footsteps pass. Quiet returns. Tomorrow, you say. Tomorrow, Jacot agrees. You blow out the candles. Morning comes the way it always does now, with cold, with a brief mercy of not remembering, and then with the weight of remembering settling back down. You dress. You wash your face with the water that has a thin skin of ice on it. You break the ice with your fist. It's a finger's width thick at the edges, paper thin in the middle, and the water underneath is cold enough to make your teeth ache. You dry your face on the inner hem of your coat, which is the cleanest part of you. You go downstairs. Maître Gilles is at the table. He got back sometime in the night. You didn't hear him, which means you were actually asleep, which has been less reliable lately. His face tells you what you already knew. Pierre, you say. Pierre, he confirms. He says it without inflection, without ceremony. A soldier named Pierre, aged 32, died of what Maître Gilles will write in his ledger as inflammation of the lungs, exacerbated by nutritional deficiency. His family is in Saint-Omer. The letter you promised to ask about will not be sent because the letter cannot be sent. I'll write it, Maître Gilles says, as if you'd spoken the last thought aloud. The letter, I'll keep it, and when the gates open, the first thing that goes out will be letters. I have 40 of them. You look at him. 40 letters from 40 dying people to 40 sets of people who don't know yet. 40 small pieces of paper in a chest somewhere, waiting for a city to stop starving. Yes, you say. That's good. You mean it. It is good. It's the best that's possible, which in these days is what good means. The ration square is the large open space near the cathedral, the one that serves as the market on Tuesdays and Fridays when there's anything to market. Today it's full before you arrive. The city comes out for ration distribution in a way it doesn't come out for anything else. Not for the constable's announcements, not for the garrison assemblies, not for the brief cold services at the cathedral. For rations, everyone comes. They come looking like themselves, which is to say they come looking reduced. It's strange how clearly you can see the weeks on people, not in dramatic ways. Nobody's falling down. Nobody's openly skeletal. The city has not yet reached that final stage where bodies simply fail in the streets. But the margins have narrowed. The padding is gone. Faces that were round in September are angular now. Hands that were broad and strong are prominent-boned. The energy that people used to carry, the ambient physical confidence of well-fed bodies, has been replaced by this careful, economizing stillness. There are children in the square. Fewer than there were 3 months ago, and you try not to do the arithmetic of why that is. Some went with the first group of bouches inutiles in November. Mothers took their children and left, gambling that Edward's mercy would outweigh his strategy. Some are just inside, kept inside by parents who decided the cold cost too much. Some, you don't finish the thought. The distribution is run by 3 of de Vienne's men, organised, efficient, the way military men are efficient because inefficiency gets people killed. A table has been set up, and behind the table are the stores. You can see them. Sacks, several, but not the big ones you remember from September. These are the end of something. This is what the bottom of the barrel looks like when the barrel is almost empty. Each person gets a measure of grain, a small one. You know the measure now by sight, the particular cup they use, ceramic, a little chipped on the left side. The cup doesn't quite fill anymore. They're scraping the bottom of the sacks even as they distribute, and the sound of the scoop against the burlap is a new kind of music, the music of diminishing. Some people also get a small piece of dried meat. Some don't. The distribution of the meat seems almost arbitrary from where you're standing, but probably isn't. Probably there's a system, rations tracked by household, by person, by some measure of need and contribution that de Vienne's men have worked out. You get your measure of grain, you don't get meat. You take your cup and step aside. The grain is rough, dark. Whatever it was before, it has been compressed and dried in conditions that weren't ideal, and it smells slightly of the sacking it came in. It's also mixed. You can see in it the darker bits that are probably acorn meal or something similar, the extenders, the things that fill the cup without providing as much nourishment as actual grain. You know this. You eat it anyway, dry, standing at the edge of the square, because eating it now means you have it instead of not having it, and there is no more complicated calculation than that. The grain is gritty between your teeth, a little sweet from the acorn, a lot like eating sand, but it goes down and stays down, and that is everything. Jacot appears at your elbow. He's got his grain and a small piece of something, dried meat, a thumbnail's worth, which he shows you briefly and then doesn't offer and doesn't eat yet. Saving it. Smart. It's starting, he says. You look toward the eastern gate. There are maybe 300 people gathered near the gate. More than you expected. More than 500, someone said last night, and the numbers were right. Many of them are women. Older women mostly, though not entirely. There are children among them. Some old men. A few people of indeterminate age who are simply too ill to be useful, too fragile to contribute to defence or supply management, too much a drain on what isn't there. None of them chose this, exactly. The choosing was done for them, by accounting, by the mathematics of survival that Maître Gilles applies to bodies and de Vienne applies to cities, by the brutal simple truth that 11,000 people cannot all eat the same amount of food if there isn't enough food for 11,000 people, and the ones who get to keep eating are the ones who make survival possible. The gate is the eastern gate, the big one. 2 massive wooden doors bound in iron that have been closed since the 8th of September and have not opened since. The hinges are enormous. You can see the rust on them from here, the reddish-brown bloom spreading from where the iron meets the stone of the gatehouse arch. Rust on a siege gate means the gate has been closed long enough for weather to work on it. Rust means months. Rust means exactly this. Jean de Vienne is there. You've seen him at distributions before, at garrison assemblies, on the walls. He's a middle-aged man, compact and iron-faced, with the particular look of a military man who has served a long time. Not the theatrical warrior look, but the administrative look. The man who has spent as many hours managing supply chains and drafting dispatches as he has spent fighting. He is dressed in his better coat today, his official capacity coat, and he is standing straight. It costs him something, you can see it. It costs everyone something to stand straight right now. He says something to the group at the gate. You can't hear the words from here. The crowd is too large, the wind from the north too insistent. But you can see the effect of the words, a ripple through the assembled people, the small adjustments of posture and expression that means someone has just confirmed something everyone feared, but hoped might not be true. The gates open. The sound of the hinges is extraordinary. 4 months of rust and cold and disuse in 2 enormous iron mechanisms, and the sound they make when forced to move is something between a groan and a scream. It goes on longer than you expect, long enough that people in the square stop and look, even people who've been avoiding looking, even people who've had their backs turned. The gap between the doors widens. Through it you can see grey winter light, the flat pale road leading east, and in the distance, at the edge of your vision, the first indication of the English lines, a row of wooden barriers, rough-hewn, and beyond them the dark shapes of structures. The people at the gate begin to move through it. Some of them go quickly, get it done, walk out and don't look back. You can read the particular determination in the set of their shoulders, the way a person walks when they've decided not to let themselves feel something until they're far enough away to feel it privately. A woman with 2 small children, maybe 5 and 8 years old, has each child by the hand and is moving with a fast, controlled stride that's not quite running. The children are mostly keeping up. The younger one is crying. The mother doesn't slow. Others go slowly, pausing at the threshold, looking back. There's a man, older, 60s maybe, walking with a stick, who stops in the very opening of the gate and turns around and looks at the city. Just looks at it. At the cathedral tower visible above the roofline, at the familiar dirty stone of the inner wall face, at the small crowd of the remaining inhabitants standing watching them go. His face is something you don't have words for yet. Maybe you'll find them later, maybe not. He turns around and goes. The gates begin to close while some of the people are still walking through. Not cruelly. There's still room. No one is being cut off. But with the finality of a decision that has been made and will not be unmade. The iron hinges scream again, shorter this time, and the gap narrows, and then there is just the gate, closed, the rust catching the thin winter light. 341 people. You'll learn later. The constable's secretary kept the count. 341 bouches inutiles, pushed out of the city with the grain ration in their stomachs, and their lives ahead of them in whatever direction the English chose to point them. Edward III will let them through. You'll learn this too later. He won't push them back this time. It's deep winter, and pushing starving women and children back into the mud is a calculation that even Edward III's patience won't sustain in December, when the cold might do it for him and the optics are worse. He'll feed them briefly. Some of them will survive, some won't. But that's later. Right now you're standing in the square with a cup of grain in your hand and the gate is closed and the square is quieter by a few hundred people and a few hundred voices and all the ambient noise that 341 lives make. Jacquot's jaw is working. He's eating the small piece of dried meat very slowly, making it last. You look at the gate, you look at the cathedral, you look at your cup. You eat the rest of your grain. There are 11 days until Christmas. You know this because Maître Gilles keeps a calendar on the wall of his surgery, a strip of vellum with small marks on it that he crosses off each morning. It was already on the wall when you started working for him, and it's been replaced once since then, but the habit remains. Every morning, cross off yesterday. Christmas in a besieged city. You've been trying not to think about what that means, but 11 days has a weight to it. At home in Hames, Christmas meant the smell of the house changed. Juniper and rosemary from wherever your mother found it. the best beer, set aside from the autumn brewing specifically for this. Your father's voice, which was not a good voice for singing, and which he used enthusiastically anyway, filling the house with something that was more commitment than melody. The cold outside being a comfortable kind of cold, because the inside was properly warm for once. A meal that was actually a meal. Meat specifically, a kind that didn't appear the rest of the year. You were 16 the last Christmas you spent in Hames. You didn't know it would be the last one. You went to bed on Christmas night in your own room, the room you'd slept in your entire life, and you thought about the city you were going to in the spring, and you felt, not ready exactly, but impatient, ready to be somewhere bigger, ready for the world to begin. The world began, all right. Maître Gilles has a patient in the afternoon who brings the siege into his house in a different way. The patient's name is Thomas. He is one of de Vienne's soldiers, not a knight, not a man-at-arms, but a crossbowman, a professional soldier of the middling sort, a man who has been doing this job for 15 years and expects to do it for 15 more. He is solidly built even now, the kind of body that holds on to its structure through sheer trained stubbornness. He has a wound on his right hand, a crossbow wound specifically, the particular kind that happens when the mechanism releases incorrectly, or when a man's grip fails from cold or weakness, and the string catches the fingers wrong. 2 of his fingers, the middle and ring, are badly abraded across the knuckles, and one is slightly dislocated. Thomas sits in Maître Gilles' surgery and says nothing while Maître Gilles assesses the damage. When the physician manipulates the dislocated finger, a controlled, practiced movement, quick and certain, Thomas makes a sound through closed teeth that is not quite a word and not quite a sound, and manages to be both at once. "Done," Maître Gilles says. Thomas looks at his hand, opens and closes it twice, testing. "When can I draw again?" he asks. You're rewinding the bandage that Maître Gilles just finished applying, and you pause at this question. Not because it's unexpected, it's the right question, the question every soldier asks, but because of the matter-of-factness of it. The assumption that drawing the crossbow is what matters, that this body exists in service of that function, and the function needs to be restored. 2 weeks, Maître Gilles says, if you keep it still. I can't keep it still for 2 weeks. Then 3 weeks, and some of those fingers may not bend correctly. Thomas digests this. The English, he says, not quite to either of you, just to the room. They could come any day. They're not going to attack, Maître Gilles says. No. Thomas looks at his hand. But eventually the constable's going to have to send us out. We can't just wait. We'll all be dead by spring. Maître Gilles says nothing to this. A sortie, Thomas says. A raid. Get out through the postern gate at night, hit their supply area, take what we can, get back. Men have suggested it. Men have suggested it for 3 months, you hear yourself say, and then immediately wonder if you should have kept quiet. Thomas looks at you. He's not offended. He's just looking. They have, he agrees. And every time the constable has said no, and every time he's right. We don't have the men. We don't have the condition, he pauses. And I think he's still waiting for Philip. The name sits in the air like a stone. Philip VI, the King of France, who was supposed to relieve this siege, who won the throne in part on the strength of military capability that he comprehensively failed to demonstrate at Crécy. where Edward's longbowmen destroyed the French cavalry in about 4 hours. Who has been, since August, somehow unable to bring himself to march north and break an English encirclement of one of France's most important port cities? "He's not coming," Jacot says. "He's in the doorway. He helps in the surgery sometimes when there's labour to be done." He says it flatly. Philip is not coming. We need to stop saying he might. Thomas looks at him, then at Maître Gilles. The physician is cleaning his instruments, not responding. "If you say that on the walls," Thomas says carefully, "de Vienne will have you up on charges." "I know. I'm not threatening you. I'm just telling you the legal situation." "I know," Jacot says again. A long pause. Outside, the wind has picked up, and it comes through a gap somewhere in the surgery wall, a thin, persistent whistle. Not loud, but constant. You've heard it every day since September. You will hear it in your sleep for years. "My brother's in Paris," Thomas says eventually. "When this is over..." And there's that phrase again, that conditional. "I'm going to go eat everything in his house and then sleep for a month." "What does your brother do?" you ask. "Wine merchant." A pause. "Good wine. Very good wine. He sends me a bottle every year at Christmas." Another pause, while all three of you sit with the specific cruelty of that sentence. "He didn't send one this year," Thomas says, "for obvious reasons. Here is what you know about the walls. Calais has been fortified since the 11th century, which means the walls you're standing on have been standing in one form or another for 200 years. They've been repaired, reinforced, rebuilt in sections. The stone you touch when you put your hand on the parapet is not all the same age. Some of it is old and grey and has developed a particular surface texture from centuries of rain and frost, almost soft at the touch, granular. Some of it is newer, patched and repaired, slightly different in colour, the joints still relatively clean. The walls are thick, at the base 5 or 6 feet, at the top where you walk 3 or 4, wide enough for 2 men to pass each other on the walkway, wide enough to set up a crossbow position with enough room to reload without stepping backward. The towers at intervals. There are 8 of them, 4 on the corners and 4 mid-wall, are thicker still, with their own staircases, their own positions. From the towers you can see further. From the towers, in clear weather, you can see the sea. You haven't been to the sea-facing tower in weeks. You went once in October, on a clear day, and you could see the English ships sitting in the harbour they'd built. You could see supply boats coming in. You could see the rhythm and ease of a well-managed military operation conducting its business. You haven't been back. But today, in the failing afternoon light, with 3 hours before Maître Gilles will need you again, you go back to the eastern wall. Your wall, if you can claim a piece of city as yours by the virtue of returning to it. The light is going. Winter light in northern France goes early and without ceremony, a gradual grey dimming, no dramatic sunset, just the quality of the air changing from afternoon grey to dusk grey, and then, faster than seems fair, to dark. The English camp is beginning to show its fires. This is the part that gets to you. More than the daytime view of the camp, more than the sight of the supply ships, more than any of it. The fires, at dusk, when they begin appearing 1 by 1 and then 10 by 10, until the arc of the English siege line is delineated in small orange points of light. It looks, from up here, like a strange constellation fallen to earth. Like the night sky has sent something down to surround the city and slowly squeeze it until it stops. The fires mean warmth. They mean cooking. They mean adequate fuel. You lean up the parapet and watch them appear. Somewhere out there, in one of those wooden huts, a soldier's supper is being prepared. Probably something simple. Garrison food, soldier's food, nothing fancy. Salt meat and bread and something hot, but hot, and enough of it. And tomorrow there will be more. The wind comes off the sea, steady and cold, smelling of salt and distance. The smell of somewhere else. The smell of the world outside this wall, which continues to exist, which hasn't stopped, which is going about its business of being the world while you stand on this stone and count fires. There are stars beginning, very faint, not yet certain. The sky is partly clouded but partly clear, and through the clear parts the stars are arriving in their slow, reliable way that has nothing to do with Calais or Edward III or hunger or any of it. This is the thing about stars in a siege. They don't care. The same stars that hung over your village in Hames. The same stars over Paris, where Thomas's brother is a wine merchant. Over London, where Edward III presumably has a house and a warm bed and eats breakfast without doing any kind of caloric mathematics at all. Over Jerusalem, which you learned about in church. Over Rome. Over everywhere there has ever been or ever will be. Indifferent. Ongoing. Honestly, a little insulting. You count the English fires anyway. Not for any strategic purpose. Just because counting is something to do with your hands and your mind when both need to be doing something. You get to 47 before you lose track. 47 fires against one city. The night is long in a besieged city. It was long before the siege, probably. December nights in northern France are long on principle, the sun barely getting above the horizon before it gives up and retreats again. But the siege makes the nights longer in a different way. The way illness makes time slow. The way hunger makes every hour announce itself more clearly than it would if you were too distracted to notice it. In the garrison's northern barracks there is a tradition that started sometime in October and which you've heard about from Thomas and others but never seen. After the evening ration, when the candles are lit and the room settles into the quiet of men who have nothing to do but wait, one of the soldiers tells stories. Not formal storytelling, not performance, just talking. One man who happens to have the voice for it, or the patience or the memory, sitting on the edge of his bed while the others lie in their blankets, talking about things that are not this. About places, about food, about women sometimes, the way soldiers talk about women, about battles, victories, the technical details of warfare that are the common vocabulary of men who have spent their lives in armies. You've heard this described. You've never gone. But tonight, after the fires, after the darkening, after the city has gone quiet in its particular December siege quiet, you find yourself walking toward the garrison rather than back to Rue de la Fontaine. Not for the physician, not for an errand, just for the sound of it. The barracks door guard is a young man called Michel who knows you by now and waves you through with the economical gesture of someone who's made that gesture 100 times. Inside, the smell hits you in layers. Wood smoke from a small fire in the iron brazier at the far end. Tallow candles, men, the particular medicinal undersmell that's been settling into these walls for months. 30-odd men in various states of horizontal. Some sleeping. Real sleep, the heavy kind. Some awake but still, staring at the ceiling or the middle distance. At the far end, near the brazier, an older man is sitting on a stool with his back against the wall. Roland. Roland is 52, which makes him ancient in garrison terms. He has been a crossbowman for 30 years, has fought in 4 different campaigns, has a face that looks like a map of previous winters, and hands so thickened by the grip and the pull of the crossbow mechanism that they look like they belong on a slightly larger person. He lost the tip of his left middle finger at Morlex in 1342, and has strong opinions about the correct angle for setting a quarrel. He's talking when you slip in and find a space against the wall near enough to hear. Quiet voice, even and unhurried. The voice of a man who knows how to pace himself. Some of the men near him are awake and listening. Some are almost asleep, but still technically present. The market at Avignon, Roland is saying, and I tell you, I have never in my life seen anything like this market. You have to understand, I grew up in a village where market day meant 3 men and a cart of turnips. This was, he gestures with both hands, encompassing something large. This was the world. Everything from everywhere. Spices from places I couldn't name. Silk you could see through. Actual see-through silk. Animals in cages. Things to eat that I don't have words for, because we don't have those words in French. What did you eat? Someone asks. Drowsy but invested. Dates, Roland says. Do you know dates? Dark, sweet, very soft. I ate 6 of them standing in the market like an idiot with my mouth open. The man selling them was laughing at me. A small sound from several places in the dark. Recognition. The specific tenderness of men who are very hungry, being told about food by someone who makes the food sound like something that could happen to them. You sit down against the wall. The stone is cold through your coat. You pull your knees up to your chest and wrap your arms around them and let the warmth from the brazier reach your face, small and distant but real. Where else? Someone asks. After Avignon. Roland settles further back. This is his element. His gift, maybe. This voice in the dark. We went south. Mediterranean coast. Different world again. The light changes. Everything is drier, harder, more orange. Like the sun is stronger somehow. And the sea is a different colour than the sea here. Not grey, blue. Actually blue. The sea isn't blue, someone says sceptically. The Mediterranean is blue. I've seen it. 3 times. Is it warmer? Much warmer. A pause. The water, the air, everything. We slept outside one night in summer and it was warm enough that you didn't need a blanket. I didn't believe it could be that warm and still be night. Silence. The productive silence of people imagining something they can barely conceive. You close your eyes, not to sleep, just to listen better. To put yourself in the story rather than in this room, in this cold, in this body that is burning through its reserves 1 slow hour at a time. Blue sea, warm night, dates eaten standing in a market by a young man who had become this old man with the thickened hands. The past is strange when you think about it this way. Everything was once happening. All of this has already happened in some permanent way. Roland was young and eating dates in Avignon, and it is unrepeatable, and also permanent. The world it happened in still exists in that form, locked, kept. You don't have a word for this feeling. But it settles into your chest next to the hunger, alongside the cold, and it is not comfort exactly. Something adjacent to comfort. The acknowledgement that other things exist and have existed and will exist. That's enough sometimes. You fall asleep against the wall. You don't mean to. You're aware of Roland's voice continuing, moving from the Mediterranean to something about Brittany. And then the Brittany fades, and there's just the sound of his voice as a texture. Not words anymore, just the even unhurried rhythm of it, and you slip under. You dream about the dog from Hames, the miller's dog chasing its tail in the morning sun, absolutely committed, absolutely certain. You dream about standing in the miller's yard watching it, the sun warm on the back of your neck, the smell of the river coming over the wall. You wake when someone nudges your shoulder. Michel, the door guard. The barracks is darker. Most of the candles down to stubs, the brazier lower. Most men asleep. You don't live here, Michel says, not unkindly, just accurately. You stand. Your neck aches from the angle. Your legs are stiff. You stretch quietly, and the joints in your knees make their noise. Roland is still on his stool at the far end, but he stopped talking. He's asleep too, chin dropped slightly, hands on his knees. His chest rises and falls, slow and steady. This man who has seen the blue Mediterranean and eaten dates in Avignon, sleeping in a garrison barracks in a starving city, waiting for a king who may not come. You leave quietly. The streets at night are darker than you've ever gotten used to. You grew up in a village where night meant darkness, real darkness, not the city darkness of before the siege when there were lit windows and torches at corner posts and the ambient glow of 10,000 fires. The village was dark, but in the village the dark was familiar. You knew it. You knew every stone and dip in every path for 200 yards in every direction from your house. Here the dark is stranger. The streets you know in daylight are different in the dark. The overhead buildings that provide shadow in summer now create genuine night at street level, even on a night when the clouds have thinned enough for moonlight. The moonlight hits the rooftops and stops there, and the street below is its own separate world. You move by memory and by the faint phosphorescence of the snow that came 2 weeks ago and has been compressed by foot traffic into grey-white patches on the cobbles, just enough reflective surface to give the stones a slightly lighter tone than the mud between them. A figure crosses the intersection ahead of you, gone before you've processed it fully. Moving fast, shoulders up, head down, the body language of someone who doesn't want to be seen and isn't stopping to explain themselves. You press against the wall and wait. Nothing else moves. The figure is gone. You continue. Here is what the city sounds like at this hour. Almost nothing. A wind sound, high up, air moving over rooftops in a steady rush. Far away, very far, something that might be voices, or might be the sound the English camp makes at this hour, carried across the 300 yards of no man's land and over the wall. A sound you can't quite identify from the north, something creaking, rhythmic. Maybe a gate somewhere, maybe a rope under tension, maybe just the city flexing in the cold, and under all of it, the kind of quiet that only a sick place makes. The quiet of people conserving, of 11,000 survival calculations temporarily paused for sleep. Maître Gilles is awake when you get back. You didn't expect this. The candle by his chair is still burning, and he's sitting at the table with his ledger open in front of him, a quill laid across the page, not writing, looking. He looks up when you come in. Where have you been? Not accusation, just the question. Garrison, Roland was telling stories. A nod, a pause. Sit down, he says. You sit. He closes the ledger. He doesn't close it the way he usually does. The careful, precise closing of a man who respects his records. But the way a man closes something when he has decided to stop looking at it for a night. I have to tell you something, he says. You wait. I received a message today from de Vienne's secretary. He puts his hands flat on the table. They're going to approach Edward for terms, not surrender, not yet, but negotiation, preliminary. seeing what might be possible. The air in the room is very still. When, you ask? They'll send a messenger to the English lines in the next week. Perhaps sooner. He looks at his hands. Vienne says he can hold another month, maybe 6 weeks. After that. He doesn't finish the sentence because the sentence finishes itself. After that, the food is gone. The people who remain, the useful mouths, the ones who stayed because they were needed, they'll have eaten through the last of what's there. And a garrison that cannot eat cannot defend walls, and walls that cannot be defended cannot contain 11,000 people, or however many 11,000 has become. What will Edward want, you ask? Mr. Gilles is quiet for a moment. His face in the candlelight is difficult to read. He'll want the city, he says. He's been sitting outside it for 4 months. He wants Calais. He can have the city. What about the people in it? That is what negotiation is for. You think about this. Negotiation, in this context, means 2 men discussing the price at which other people's safety can be bought, or not bought, or bought only partially. Negotiation means there are outcomes in which the people inside these walls walk out alive and whole and go back to their lives, and outcomes in which they don't, and the distance between these outcomes is whatever Edward decides it is, and whatever Philip could be induced to offer, and whatever de Vienne is willing to sacrifice to bridge the gap. What can de Vienne offer him, you ask? The city, Maître Gilles says, in good condition, without being burned, without the harbour being sabotaged, a peaceful handover. A pause. The lives of the garrison. De Vienne will want the garrison to walk out with their arms and their honour. Edward may or may not agree. And the citizens? Maître Gilles doesn't answer immediately. The candle flame bends sideways in a draught from somewhere, steadies. Edward expelled the population of Caen, he says. After the battle, he kept the town and sent the people out. But he didn't hurt them. He didn't hurt them. The difference is enormous and not enormous. The difference is between alive and displaced and not alive. But displaced means Isabeau the weaver going somewhere else, to Boulogne or Amiens or wherever her family is, starting again. Means Maître Gilles and his 40 letters walking out through a gate with his medicine chest and his ledger, finding somewhere to practice. Means you walking out of Calais through whatever gate Edward's terms specify, getting on a road, going somewhere. Going somewhere. The thought of a road, an open road, a road you could actually walk down without a wall stopping you. It does something strange to your chest. Something close to pain, but warmer. When will we know, you ask? A week, maybe 2. He looks at the candle. Maybe longer. Negotiations with kings are not quick things. You nod. You sit with this for a while and he sits with you, 2 people in a cold kitchen processing the first real information about the end of a siege that has been going on since September. Maître, you say. Yes. Will you... You stop. Try again. After. When this is over. Will you go back to practising here? If there's still a Calais to practice in? He's quiet for a long moment. I think so, he says. If they let us come back. A pause. If they let anyone come back, it will need a physician. Cities always need physicians. He looks at you briefly. And a physician will need an apprentice. You look at the table. Your hands. There on the wood. Still your hands. Still 17. Still the hands of someone becoming something. Still learning. Still in the middle. Get to bed, he says. He says it the same way every night. The same cadence. The same slight gruffness that isn't unkindness. You get up. You take the candle he doesn't need. You go upstairs. 3 nights after Maître Gilles tells you about the negotiations, something happens on the walls. You hear it first through sleep. Not an alarm, not a horn, but a sound that doesn't belong to the normal night lexicon of Calais. A series of short, sharp impacts, metal on stone, and then voices, low and urgent, and then feet on cobbles moving fast. You're up before you're fully awake. This is something the siege has done to you. Removed the slow morning transition. There's no luxury of half-consciousness anymore. The body has learned that sounds at night require immediate assessment. Jacques is already standing. He's holding the candle stub, not lit, just in his hand as a habit. North wall, he says. You both go. The north wall faces the harbour, or what was the harbour before the English took it. This is the section of the wall that overlooks the sea, and on clear days from the north tower you can see far enough to feel the world's size. Tonight there's no clear sight. The clouds are back, thick, the moon entirely gone behind them, and the only light is what the city makes itself, which is not much. There are 4 soldiers on the north wall when you arrive. 2 are looking outward, over the parapet. 2 more are crouched down, doing something with ropes. A long rope, knotted at intervals, that goes over the parapet and disappears into the dark below. Thomas is there, his bandaged hand awkward against his crossbow, the crossbow slung regardless. He looks at you with the expression of someone who isn't surprised to see you, but isn't particularly pleased either. Stay back, he says, not threatening, practical. What happened? He looks at the wall, back at you. Someone went over, he says. The rope, the knotted rope over the parapet. Who? 3 men. Garrison. They decided. He stops. His jaw works. They decided not to wait. 3 men who looked at the numbers, the grain that's almost gone, the negotiation that might take weeks, the 6-week timeline Maître Gilles mentioned, and decided to stop waiting and do something. Took a rope, went over the north wall at the section closest to the old harbour and tried to, what? Swim? Find a boat? Get to a supply depot? You don't know what they were planning. Maybe they didn't know exactly what they were planning. Maybe the plan was just out, away, movement, after months of siege stillness. The English night watch, Thomas says, and that tells you enough. Are they? 2 came back up the rope. He nods toward 2 men sitting against the inner wall face, blankets around them, one of them holding his arm in a way that suggests it's hurt. 3rd one didn't. Silence. The wind off the harbour is cold and salted and relentless. The rope still hangs over the parapet. One of the soldiers is drawing it up now, hand over hand, and you watch the knots come over the edge one by one. The 3rd man isn't on the end of it. They pulled him back, the soldier drawing the rope says, to no one specifically. The English. Pulled him away from the rope before he could grab it. Is he dead? Jacques asks. The soldier looks at him. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe they took him prisoner. Prisoner in the English camp, 300 yards away. Alive, possibly. Sitting in a wooden hut with a fire and food. Captured but warm. There's something almost unbearable about this particular possibility. Not dead, just on the other side. Fed perhaps by now. 300 yards. You look at the parapet, at the darkness beyond it. 300 yards. Get down from here, Thomas says, looking at you and Jacques both. He's not angry. His voice has that quality it gets sometimes. The flatness that means he's operating past the point where emotion is a useful tool. You're not garrison. You don't belong up here at night. Go. You go. Back in the attic room, Jacot and you lie in the dark and don't speak for a while. The straw mattress, the cold ceiling, the crack in the plaster. If they get terms, Jacot says eventually, if there's actually a surrender, what do you do after? I told you, Maître Gilles wants to come back if they let him. And you stay with him. I stay with him. A pause. You? Jacot is quiet for a moment. My father's ovens are still here, he says. The bakery, it's still there. I walk past it every week. If they don't burn it, if they let people come back. Another pause. My mother's sister is in Amiens. I could go there first, get strength back, come back in the spring. It's a good plan. It's not really a plan. It's a sequence of things that might happen. That's what plans are. He makes a sound, not quite a laugh. My mother taught me the starter, he says. The bread starter. Every baker has a starter. It's the live culture, the yeast, the thing that makes the bread rise. Ours was 30 years old. She got it from her mother, who got it from hers. A pause. My father always said, you can rebuild the ovens, you can buy the flour, but you can't replace a 30-year starter. It's specific. It's ours. You know what he's going to say. Is it still? You start. I've been keeping it alive, Jacot says quietly. This whole time. There's almost nothing to feed it with. But I've been keeping it going. Every few days I add a little flour, whatever I can spare. Sometimes it's almost nothing. Sometimes it's nothing at all, and I just keep it covered and warm and hope. It's in a clay pot under my side of the mattress. Has been since October. You lie with this for a moment. A 30-year bread starter under the mattress, fed on scraps and stubbornness, kept alive through 4 months of siege while the city ate its furniture and expelled its old people and watched its garrison fail. Jacot, you say. What? That might be the most French thing I've ever heard. He laughs. A real laugh. The first one you've heard from him in... You genuinely cannot remember the last time. It comes out rough, slightly broken, like a joint that hasn't been used in too long, but it's real and it's there and it fills the cold, dark attic room with something warm. You laugh too. Both of you, briefly, at the insane tenacity of keeping a bread starter alive inside a siege, at the specific prioritization this implies, at the image of Jacquot guarding a clay pot of yeast under a mattress for 4 months because some continuity is worth more than comfort. The laugh fades, but it leaves something behind in the room, like breath in cold air, visible for a moment, then gone, but real while it lasted. Get some sleep, Jacot says. The negotiations begin, as far as you can tell, on the 14th of December. You know this because de Vienne's secretary, a young man with ink-stained fingers who occasionally requires Maître Gilles' services for a persistent cough, lets it slip while being examined, the way people let things slip to physicians because physicians are already trusted with your body. So what's information after that? A messenger went out under a flag of truce, not to Edward himself, but to the command structure of the English camp, a preliminary communication, a signal that the city was willing to discuss. Edward's response came back the same day. He would accept the city's surrender, full surrender, unconditional. Calais and everything in it, including the harbour and the fortifications. He would not guarantee the lives of the garrison or the citizens. That remained to be negotiated. This is how wars end, when they end this way. Not with battles, but with letters passed between men under coloured flags while the armies watch from a distance. Not with drama, but with the slow, legalistic machinery of medieval diplomacy grinding forward one concession at a time. What does unconditional mean, you ask Maître Gilles when he tells you this. It means he holds the stronger position, Maître Gilles says, and he knows it, and he wants de Vienne to know that he knows it before they begin. Can de Vienne negotiate from that position? He has only one thing Edward wants, the city intact. De Vienne can threaten to burn it before surrendering, damage the harbour, destroy the stores, make Calais a ruin rather than a prize. He pauses. He won't. It's the civilian city. He's been trying to keep them alive for 4 months. He's not going to burn it. But the threat has value, and Edward knows de Vienne has it. This is the math you don't learn in the surgery, the cold arithmetic of leverage and loss. So what does he want for the civilians, you ask? Safe passage, freedom to leave with their possessions, or as much of their possessions as remain. He says the last part with a brief dry quality that might be dark humour in a different register. And the garrison? De Vienne will want the garrison to leave with arms and honour. Soldiers who surrender honourably are different from soldiers who are captured. The difference matters for who they can serve afterward. He cleans his quill. Edward may insist on the garrison being held, used as hostages until the political situation settles, used as leverage with Philip. Philip VI of France, who is still apparently in Paris, waiting for the political situation to clarify itself without him. Philip isn't coming, you say. Maître Gilles looks at you. Then he says, no, Philip is not coming. It's the first time he's said it plainly, not obliquely, not with the physician's care for managing what patients are told, just directly. We've known for 2 months, he says. De Vienne has known. He's been holding out anyway because surrender means giving Edward a port on the French coast, which is strategically catastrophic for France. Every extra week he held Calais was worth something, even without Philip's army. But now, he pauses. Now it's just lives, and lives have a different calculation than strategy. You sit with this. Lives have a different calculation than strategy. It sounds like something you should write down, something to remember. You don't have anything to write with. Christmas comes on a Tuesday. The cathedral opens its doors in the morning. The priests are there, tired, thinner than September, but there. The service is shorter than normal, stripped of ceremony that would take energy they don't have, but the words are the same words. The same cadences that have been said in churches on this date for longer than Calais has had walls. The same shapes that Christmas has always made in the air. You go. Not because Maître Gilles told you to. He doesn't make you go to church. He's careful about that. Religious observation is between you and whatever you believe. You go because it's Christmas, and the cathedral is warm with the collective body heat of 300 people standing close together, and warmth is warmth. The cathedral stones are old, much older than the walls. The foundation was laid in the 12th century, rebuilt and expanded since, but parts of it have been standing for longer than anyone currently living has been alive by more than a generation. The ceiling vaults, when you tilt your head back and look up at them, achieve something the mathematicians and architects worked out centuries before you were born. A way to carry enormous weight on arching ribs of stone so that the spaces between can be open, can have light, can be this particular quality of inside that feels larger than the building that contains it. You stand in the nave and look up at the vaults and think about the men who built this, who set those keystones, who looked at drawings and translated them into tons of cut stone balanced perfectly on each other in perpetuity. They're gone, every one of them, but the vaults are here, The balance is here. Whatever they understood about how weight works and where stress goes, they understood it correctly enough that 200 years of winters haven't moved the stones. Something about this is deeply reassuring in a way you don't entirely have words for. The service ends. The people file out into the cold. There is no special food for Christmas. There is the ration, which is now 3 times a week because de Vienne has decided to extend what remains further rather than concentrate it. Smaller amounts more often, keeping the caloric trickle steady. The ration for today is the same as any other ration day. The city doesn't have the reserves for ceremony, but Jacot disappears for an hour in the afternoon and comes back with something in his hands. A small bread roll. Brown, dense, slightly misshapen. The shape of something made by someone who knows what they're doing but has had to work with inadequate materials and inadequate heat. He puts it on the table. You look at it. Is that, you start. From the starter. He sits down across from you. I've been saving the flour for 3 weeks. Just a little each time. Not enough to notice from the ration. He looks at the roll. The oven in the garrison kitchen. The cook let me use it this morning for an hour. He wanted one of them for himself, and I said yes. You look at the bread roll. It is small. It is not much. It is probably mostly acorn flour and determination, and a 30-year culture of wild yeast that has survived a 4-month siege under a straw mattress. It is the best thing you have seen in months. You break it in half. The inside is dense and dark and slightly sour from the starter, and it tears unevenly because there's not enough gluten in this flour to make a clean tear, and the smell of it is the smell of something that used to be normal and has temporarily stopped being normal, but has not stopped being itself. You eat your half. The taste of it. It tastes like bread. Just bread. Simple, slightly sour, dense, real. But bread is the most human thing there is, perhaps, when you get down to it. The oldest technology, the most basic application of the fact that human beings discovered they could take grains and water, and the invisible action of wild yeast, and make something that sustains them. Every civilization has done this. Every culture, every mother who ever fed a family. This is the oldest continuous thread in human food, this simple thing in your hand. You eat it very slowly. Jacot eats his slowly too. You don't say anything. There's nothing to say that would be better than silence. Outside, the church bells ring. Full peal this time. The bell ringers have enough energy today, or have decided that today justifies the expenditure, or were told to by someone. The bells of the Cathedral of Calais ringing for Christmas in a besieged city. The sound goes up over the rooftops and across the walls, and out across the 300 yards of frozen ground and into the English camp, where presumably their own priests are also saying the same words in the same cadences. The same feast, the same day, 2 sides of the same war, celebrating the same birth. Something about this seems like it should mean something, like it should change something, like the shared observance of a holy day should create a bridge over the gap between army and city. It doesn't, of course. But the bells ring anyway, over both of them. The negotiations take 11 more days. You hear about them in fragments, the way everyone in Calais hears about them, through de Viennes, announcements, through the garrison soldiers who talk among themselves, through the physician's secretary with his cough who can't stop letting things slip. Edward's position is firm. He wants the city unconditional. He is willing to spare the citizens, allow them to leave with what they carry, but he wants something symbolic, something that demonstrates the completeness of French defeat. something for the history of this siege to fix on. He wants 6 men. 6 men from the city's leading citizens. The most important ones. The mayor, the wealthy merchants, the men whose names are synonymous with Calais. He wants them to come out of the gates wearing their best clothes, but with ropes around their necks, barefoot, holding the keys of the city and the keys of the castle, walking to him in submission, to do with as he likes. He wants 6 men to give their lives, or at least to offer their lives, to put them completely in his hands, so that the other 11,000 can go free. This is Edward III's version of mercy. You hear about this on the 28th of December, 3 days after Christmas. You hear it from Thomas, who heard it from de Vienne's own mouth at the garrison assembly. Thomas tells you outside the barracks, leaning against the cold wall, his bandaged hand against his chest. 6 men, Thomas says. He wants 6 men to come out with nooses. Will he kill them, you ask? He says no. He says they'll be treated as prisoners of war, held until terms are arranged with Philip. A pause. Whether he means it, another pause. Edward is a complicated man. He's merciless, and he's theatrical. He wants the image. He wants the image of these 6 men walking out of the gates with ropes around their necks. He wants that image in front of every army in Europe. He wants people to know, this is what happens when you resist me. And if nobody volunteers? Thomas looks at you. People will volunteer, he says. They always do. Somewhere in this city are 6 men who will look at 11,000 people and decide their lives are worth that. He shifts. His hand moves against his chest. De Vienne has already said he'll be one of the 6. Jean de Vienne, the constable who has held this city since September, who stood straight at the gate when the bouches inutiles went out, who has been running the calculation of survival for 4 months without visible flinching, at least not publicly visible, putting a rope around his own neck so the city survives. He's really going, you ask? He's a soldier, Thomas says. This is his version of the last battle. It happens on the 4th of January. The morning is clear, unusually clear for Calais in January. The clouds have blown off overnight, and what's left is hard winter blue sky and low sharp sunlight and cold that has teeth. The kind of morning that makes the stones glow slightly and the frost glitter on the rooftops and everything feel very real and very present. You're on the eastern wall. You went up there at dawn. Maître Gilles doesn't need you until later. The negotiations' conclusion has freed him briefly from some of the garrison work, some temporary suspension of urgency that comes when the worst thing has already been decided. So you went up before the light fully arrived, and you've been watching the sky change from dark to grey to this particular blue, and you're there when the gates open. The main gates, the big ones, the same iron hinges that screamed in November when the bouches inutiles went out. They scream again today, but differently somehow. Or maybe you just hear them differently. 6 men walk out of the gates of Calais. You can see them from the wall, not clearly, not with individual faces, but as distinct figures against the grey of the road and the pale frost of the ground beyond the gate. 6 men, and they're dressed in their best, which even now, even after 4 months of siege, is better than anything you own. Good wool, good boots, though the boots are bare feet by the time they walk out, because Edward's term said barefoot, and these are men who understand terms and know that the terms matter more than dignity today. No, that's wrong. The terms are the dignity. The dignity is in the keeping of them. Around each man's neck, a rope, not a noose exactly. Not the hanging kind, not knotted. A simple loop of rope, thick falling across the chest. The kind of rope that says, "We surrender." The kind of rope that says, "Ah." Leaves are in your hands, and we're demonstrating this physically, because gestures have to be made with the body or they're not real. You count them. 1, 2, 3. The fourth one is tall and walks slightly ahead of the others. Devienne, you think. 4, 5, 6. They walk down the road toward the English lines. The distance between the gates and the English barriers is about 300 yards. You watch them walk it, slowly. Not slowly from fear, or maybe partly from fear, that's human, but slowly from intention. Each step deliberate, each step saying, "We chose this." This is not defeat shambling. This is men walking a road they chose to walk. The English lines receive them. There are soldiers there waiting, organised as soldiers always are at a ceremony that is also a military transaction. You can see figures moving, can see the 6 men being met, can see something. A pause, a meeting, something official happening that you can't see the details of from here. They don't kill them. You hold your breath for a while watching, and when nothing terrible happens in the way that terrible things happen, when there's no sudden violent movement, no collapse, you breathe. They don't kill them. You'll learn later, Edward was going to, or had decided to in the theatrical way he made decisions, half strategy, half performance. He was ready to hang them, or had it ready as an option. And then his wife, Philippa, his queen, who was present at the siege because medieval queens went to sieges with their husbands, this was just normal, got on her knees in front of him. On her knees, the Queen of England in front of the King of England, in front of his army, in front of the representatives of the defeated city. She begged him for the men's lives, and Edward, being the complicated theatrical man he was, being a man who understood that mercy in the right moment is also a performance, and that kneeling queens are an image that sticks, agreed. 6 men walked out of Calais with ropes around their necks and walked back in alive. The city would be surrendered. The English would have their harbour, their foothold on the French coast, everything they came for. But the citizens would go free. Even the garrison would be paroled eventually. These things take time, but they happen. The full surrender comes 3 days later, on the 7th of January. The gates open, all of them this time, all at once, a sound you didn't know could be made by iron and wood, but which turns out to be something like an exhalation. The English soldiers begin to file in, organised, disciplined, controlled. Edward ran a tight siege and he runs a tight occupation. There is no sacking, no burning, no violence. He wants the city intact. He gets what he wants. You stand on the eastern wall and watch them come in. There are soldiers in Edward's royal colours coming through the main gate, and soldiers in other colours. The various lords who fought at Crécy and came here to complete the campaign, and horses and carts and the administrative machinery of a conquering army settling in for a long stay. They know how to do this. They've been planning it for 4 months. The citizens of Calais are leaving through the other gates. Simultaneously, in the strange choreography of a negotiated surrender, the English come in one way while the French go out the other. Streams crossing in a city that is becoming, in the space of this morning, a different city. The French, with their bundles and their families and whatever they were able to carry. The English with their equipment and their horses and their organisational charts of occupation. Maître Gilles has his medicine chest. He is carrying it himself. He didn't ask you to carry it. He never does with the chest. It's his thing, his professional identity in a box. He has his ledger. He has the 40 letters from the dying, or from those who died before he could send them, and he will carry them until he can deliver them. You have your coat with the tear on the forearm. You have the things you came to Calais with, which were not many, and the things you acquired in 2 years of working for a physician, which are mostly in your head. The smell of infected wounds versus healing ones, the way a fever breaks, how to set a dislocated finger, the difference between starvation dehydration and illness dehydration, how to change a dressing without making it worse. You have these things, they're yours. They go where you go. Jacques has his pack, and somewhere in the pack, wrapped in cloth sealed with a piece of leather, the clay pot. You don't have to ask. You can see the shape of it against the fabric. The careful way he holds the pack, slightly tilted, as if carrying something liquid that must not be spilled. It's still alive, you ask. I fed it this morning, he says. I used the last of the flour. A pause. Better it go into the starter than into my stomach. It knows what to do with it. You stand at the eastern wall one last time before you follow the stream of people toward the southern gate, the one they've been directed to by the constable's remaining staff and the English guards, who are already coordinating the exit with the professional efficiency of people who have done this before. Below you, the road east, pale with frost, leading somewhere, leading everywhere, eventually, if you follow it long enough. Behind you, the city, already changing, already becoming something else, already being organised and catalogued and claimed by the machinery coming through the main gate. The cathedral still there, the walls still standing, the houses still standing, almost all of them, the bakery on the corner where Jacquot's father made bread and where Jacquot will eventually make bread again. Above you, the hard blue January sky, the same sky as always. You breathe in the cold air. It still smells of the siege, of rot and long cold fires, and the specific smell of a city that has been through what this one has been through. But there's something else in it today. The salt wind off the sea, coming in over the walls without obstruction now that the gates are open. Clean and cold and entirely indifferent to history. Ready? Jacquot asks. Ready, you say. You go down the steps. The road east from Calais in January is not a comfortable road. The frost makes the surface hard but treacherous. The rutted mud of the previous months has frozen into ridges and hollows that turn under your boots unpredictably, and the places where the frost is thin over standing water flex when you step on them in ways that are cold and unpleasant. The road is crowded with people, not panicked, not running. There's nothing to run from anymore. The emergency is over. The acute crisis has resolved into the chronic crisis of displacement, which is quieter and in some ways harder, but dense. A column of people walking east because there's nothing left to the west except the English. You walk. After an hour, the city is out of sight. The walls disappear behind a low rise in the ground, and then there's just the road and the flat pale landscape of northern France in winter, and the sky above it. You notice the smell changes. The siege smell is gone. Just cold air. Just the smell of frost on dead grass. Just the faint, clean sharpness of a January day in the open country. You breathe it in until your lungs ache from the cold. Maître Gilles walks ahead of you, the medicine chest on a strap across his chest, his face forward, thinking about something you're not part of. He has that quality when he's thinking, a completeness to his inner occupation that makes him unreachable. You've been his apprentice for 2 years, and you've learned to read this the way you'd learn to read weather. When he looks like this, you give him space. Jacot walks beside you. He hasn't spoken much since the gate. He's in that same internal place, the same private processing. You don't push. You know what he's carrying. You know what it means to walk away from everything that was your life. A child passes you going faster than the crowd. Maybe 10 years old. A boy, running for no apparent reason except that he's outside and there's space, and his body has been cooped up for 4 months, and apparently even inadequate nutrition can't stop a 10-year-old from running when the road is clear. He runs until he's 20 feet ahead of the column, then stops, turns back, stands there in the middle of the road with his arms out sideways and his face turned up to the sky. Just standing in the open road. Just being outside. Just space. You watch him, and something in your chest, something that has been contracted and compressed for 4 months, something that got so slowly compressed you didn't notice it happening until just now when it begins to ease, does exactly that. Eases, slightly, like a fist slowly opening. You're outside a wall. You haven't been outside a wall since September. The road goes east, and east of here is Hames, and Hames is where your mother is, and your father, and the miller's dog is probably dead, but the miller is probably alive, and the river is there, and the fields in spring will be there. 20 miles. You could walk 20 miles. Not today. You're too weak for 20 miles today. You know this. The mathematics of caloric debt tells you this clearly. Today is maybe 5 miles, 7 if you push it, and then you'll need to eat something real and sleep somewhere warm and do it again tomorrow. But there's a tomorrow. There's a road. And at the end of the road, in however many days it takes a healing body to cover 20 miles, there's home. You stop at a village 6 miles from Calais. The village has a name you don't catch. It has a church and a well and a dozen houses, and a very surprised-looking farmer who finds 200 displaced people from Calais arriving on his doorstep at mid-afternoon asking about food and shelter. The farmer feeds what people he can. Not enough for everyone, but something. He has turnips. He has salted fish from somewhere. He has a wife who brings out a huge pot and starts making something that is water and turnips and a bone with very little meat left on it, but which will be hot. Hot. You sit on a low stone wall outside the farmer's barn while the turnip soup is being made, and you put your face in your hands, not from grief or exhaustion exactly, but from the particular overwhelm of things having changed, of the wall not being there anymore, of the road having opened, of 20 miles being possible. Maître Gilles sits beside you. He doesn't say anything. He has a quality. You've appreciated this for 2 years and appreciate it more now. Of being able to sit next to someone in silence without making the silence awkward. He just sits with you and looks at the field and lets the afternoon light fall on both of you. After a while, in the spring, he says, when we go back, they'll let us back. Edward will want French merchants back. He wants Calais to function. He'll let the useful ones return. He looks at the field. In the spring, there will be work to do. The city will need... He stops. The city will need everything, including a physician. Including a physician. A pause. And an apprentice, you say. He looks at you. Something in his face does the thing it almost never does, which is softened slightly at the edges. The physician's controlled expression giving way briefly to the man underneath it. And an apprentice, he says. The turnip soup is ready as the sun starts going down. You eat it standing up because there's no room to sit in the farmer's kitchen. 30 people crammed in there. passing a shared ladle and bowls that go around and come back and go around again. It is turnip water with a flavour of bone in it, and a few actual pieces of turnip floating in it, and it is the best soup you've ever eaten in your life. It is hot. It is real. It is not siege ration and not charity, and not the last of something running out, but rather the beginning of things replenishing, the beginning of the long work of a body returning to itself. You eat 2 bowls, you're going to be all right. That night you sleep in a barn, not alone, 30 of you on the straw packed together for warmth. Real straw, not compressed to nothing, but thick and deep and smelling of summer and hay and the large animals that live here and have been moved outside for the occasion. It is cold, but there are bodies, and straw is not nothing, and the cold is the clean outdoor cold, not the siege cold, not the cold of a city eating itself, just winter. You lie on your back in the straw. The barn is dark except for one candle near the door, burning low, casting just enough light to see the shapes of people around you, the various arrangements of sleeping bodies, a child curled against a mother, 2 old men back to back sharing warmth, Jacques beside you with the pack against his chest, guarding the clay pot even in sleep. The habit already so deep it doesn't need waking thought to maintain. Your body is tired in a way that is clean. Walking tired, not siege tired. The ache in your knees is still there, but it is less. The lightheadedness of early today is less. 2 bowls of soup less than before, which is exactly as much less as it should be. The mathematics of a recovering body are slower than the mathematics of a failing one, but they work in the right direction. You are warm enough. You are fed enough. You are safe enough. 3 enoughs. The sound of the barn, breathing. Slow, collective. The sound of 30 people asleep or approaching sleep. One person somewhere at the back is snoring quietly. The comfortable snore, not the troubled kind. A horse is moving in the adjacent space, hooves on stone, a soft settling sound. Outside, wind through the eaves, steady, cold, coming from the sea somewhere behind you, carrying nothing but salt and distance. An owl somewhere in the dark above the barn, a brief call, then nothing. You close your eyes. Here is what you have survived. 4 months and 11 days of siege, the smell of a city eating itself, 3 ration distributions a week, then twice a week, then once. The sound of gates opening when they should stay closed and closing when you needed them open. 300 yards that might as well have been an ocean. The firing of crossbows into darkness. A man named Pierre dying of his lungs. An old soldier who had seen the blue Mediterranean and wanted to go back. 40 letters in a medicine chest waiting for the world to reconnect enough to deliver them. A bread starter under a mattress. Christmas bread. A 10-year-old boy running in the first open road. You have survived all of this. This is not a small thing. In the version of this story that goes into the history books, the Siege of Calais is about Edward III and Philip VI and the Battle of Crécy and the strategic importance of a French port to English ambitions on the continent. It's about the burghers of Calais who become famous. Rodin will make a sculpture of them 500 years from now, 6 bronze men with ropes around their necks, and they'll stand in front of the Houses of Parliament in London, the very enemy capital, because history does strange and complicated things with its own material. But in this version, the version you lived, the version that happened to your knees and your hunger and your hands, it's about these things. A physician who kept a ledger of names, A baker's son who kept something alive under a mattress because some continuity is worth everything. An old crossbowman in a cold barracks telling stories about a blue sea. The sound of iron hinges. 20 miles of road. The straw shifts as you settle deeper into it. The tiredness moves through you in waves now. The specific luxury of a body that has permission to rest. Not the desperate sleep of someone rationing rest. Permission sleep. You're warm enough and fed enough and safe enough, and you don't have to count anything tonight. The owl calls again, farther away this time. The candle by the door gutters but holds. You think briefly about Hames, the village 20 miles east, the miller's dog, dead now probably, but the miller living. Your father's voice, your mother's bread that was not extraordinary bread but was always actually there. You think about spring, the way the fields look in April in northern France, which is a kind of green that is almost violent in its intensity after winter. Everything coming back, everything deciding to come back, every blade of grass an argument for continuity. The way the light changes, the way the air changes, the way even Calais will change when March comes, with the sea turning from slate grey to something with colour in it, and the ships beginning to move again, and the sounds of a living city replacing the sound of a dying one. It will be different, Calais in the spring. It will be English, which is a strange thing for a French city to be. It will have people who weren't there before and be missing people who were. The ovens on Jacot's father's street will need relighting. The vats in Isabeau's house will need heating. The streets will need the particular kind of attention that streets get when people care about them again. Maître Gilles will open his surgery. He'll find a table for the medicine chest, a hook for his coat, a wall for the new calendar. January, February, March. Marks crossing off days that are going forward now rather than counting down. He'll need an apprentice. You're going to be a physician. Not yet. Not for years. There's everything still to learn. All the things that siege didn't teach and that normal practice will. The full range of what a body can do wrong. The full range of what a physician can do to help or avoid making it worse. You're going to be terrible at some of it. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to stand next to someone like Maître Gilles and feel the distance between what you know and what he knows, and wonder if you'll ever close it. You'll close it. One patient at a time. 1 year at a time. This is how every physician who has ever lived became a physician, including Maître Gilles, who was once an apprentice standing next to someone who knew more than him, including whoever that person was, standing next to their own teacher. Back and back through the centuries of medicine, through every person who ever looked at a broken body and thought, I know something about this. You sink into the straw. The thinking softens. The barn sounds change as you go deeper. They get farther. The snoring, the hoarse, the wind in the eaves. All of it recedes to a distance that isn't distance exactly, more like depth. The sounds are still there, but they're below you somehow, or you're above them, floating somewhere in the warm dark of almost sleep. Let it come. Let the barn go. Let the straw go soft under you. Let the cold at the edges of the blanket stop mattering. Let Calais go. The grey of the walls, the iron hinges, the eastern view, the English fires in the dark. Let them settle into their place in the past, which is exactly where they belong. Not gone. Never gone. But back there, behind you, the way roads are behind you when you've walked them. Let the hunger go. It's going. Slowly. The way these things go slowly, but going. 2 bowls of turnip soup. Tomorrow something else. The day after something else. the body returning to itself the way the city will return to something like itself, gradually, the damage assessing itself and beginning the long work of repair. Let Pierre go, with his lungs and his family in Saint-Omer and his letter in the medicine chest. Let Roland go, back to his stool in the garrison, back to the Mediterranean he sailed, and the dates he ate in Avignon, and the blue sea that got into his blood. Let the crow go from the parapet wall, those black wings already far away on the cold air. Let it all go. You've earned this. Take it. Centuries will pass. Calais will change hands again. England will hold it for 200 years, until 1558, when Mary Tudor loses it, and reportedly says that when she dies, they'll find Calais written on her heart. It becomes French again and stays French, and what Edward built and Jacot's father's bakery built, and what you and Maître Gilles maintained through 4 months of mathematics and turnip soup and 30-year starters, that becomes the foundation of something that keeps going. The walls will come down, the old medieval walls that you learn like the lines of your own hands. They'll be replaced, rebuilt, modernized, and eventually the city will grow past them entirely, the way cities do, expanding until the walls are just archaeology, until historians find the hinges. The burghers of Calais will become famous in the way that dramatic moments become famous. The image of 6 men walking out with ropes around their necks, preserved in chronicle after chronicle, passed down, argued over, eventually cast in bronze. People will stand in front of that sculpture in London and Paris and think, can you imagine? You imagined it. You were there. But people will still live in Calais, still wake in the morning and wash their faces in cold water, still go to work in cities that need physicians and bakers and weavers and crossbowmen and all the other things that cities need to be cities, still look at the sea and think about somewhere else, still fall asleep in the dark with sounds in the air around them, the sounds of a living place, still and always the sounds of people continuing. Some things don't change. The body's need for rest doesn't change. The specific mercy of a warm place to lie down at the end of a long day, that doesn't change. The particular surrender of letting go at the end of the day's accumulation of weight and necessity and urgency, just putting it down, just letting the mind go quiet, just allowing the body to do what it has always known how to do, repair itself in the dark while you're not watching. That's what sleep is, maybe. The original negotiation. The one the body makes every night without needing to be asked. The unconditional surrender to recovery. You've earned yours. Take it. Let the thoughts slow. Let them slow. Let the barn go. Let the road go. Let the 20 miles go. They'll be there tomorrow, every one of them, patient as stone. Let the spring go. It's coming whether you watch for it or not. The green violent spring of the northern France. The fields deciding to come back. The light deciding to come back. Let the future go. It knows where to find you. There is nothing to calculate tonight. There is nothing to ration. There is only this. The straw, the warmth, the 30 people breathing around you, the owl outside doing owl things in the winter dark, the candle burning down toward morning, and you, here, warm enough, safe enough, fed enough. That's enough. That's everything. Good night.